Good afternoon, and many thanks for listening to my performance. In the course of my research, I have found some interesting works inspired by Bellini's operas published in the 19th century in the USA, when the guitar was appreciated by instrumentalists and composers. Prominent guitarists were able to perform as touring professionals in concert halls and theaters. Unfortunately, most of their original works are rarely performed these days. However, a relevant number of compositions consist of arrangement of Italian operas arias. Publishers and periodicals offered catalogues of guitar music, mostly intended for amateur performers. It was common to find a portrait of a woman with a guitar on the cover. A number of scores were edited for two guitars or for guitar with piano accompaniment, but in most cases the arranger clearly indicated that the song could also be performed alone. However, due to technical difficulties, sometimes it is necessary to adapt the execution speeds in order to best express the instrumental characteristics. Today, guitar makers of the time are known more than the guitarist composers. Instead, at that time, instruments were simpler and cheaper than the European equivalents. Usually crafted in large workshops and factories, guitars were more suited to rigid climates too. In the 19th century, the guitar was mostly an instrument for the middle-class amateurs, since many of them could not afford a piano. It is worth noticing that a consistent number of young women and middle-class African Americans play the guitar. Based on this, it would not be hazardous to consider this instrument as a relevant tool to fight against racism and sexism. As a result of this period of unprecedented focus, BMG movement stimulates mass production of instrument and magazine publishing industry. However, in the last decades of the century, banjo attempted to usurp the guitar's place in America's musical life, adopting similar repertoire and technique. Arrangements of the famous Bellinian themes were popular at that time. Thus, American professional guitarists and amateurs were provided of them from a consistent number of composers. Today, the Library of Congress lists 40 works. Arrangement, fantasias, and theme with variations for solo guitar or guitar with the other instruments are included. Due to editorial reasons, some of them were divided in two or more series. Among these works, the two series of Cowpa's Gems from Norma are noteworthy, as well as a transcription from Sonnambula by Bischoff, which provides a different tuning for A strings to G and A string to D. Holland was principally a pedagogue and is known to be both one of the main guitarists of his generation and as the author of the renowned comprehensive method for the guitar. He studied at Oberlin College, outside Cleveland, Ohio, one of the few higher education institutions that the black population could access at that time. He spoke 8 different languages, assisting him in receiving students from overseas, as well as recent immigrants and increasing knowledge of foreign guitar literature. During his life, he fought for civil rights in the United States of America, working for the end of slavery. According to Banks, Holland's ability to speak a number of languages allowed himself to deal with a number of activities for the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge, who joined in 1861. As a Master Mason, he secured recognition of African American Freemasons by white Freemasons in Europe, despite the refuse by American white lodges because of their race. As Deputy Grand Master, he facilitated foreign relations, and it is worth noticing that his efforts were recognized in Europe from the Viennese Masonic periodical Der Freimaurer. He produced a large body of works for the guitar, most of which is infrequently performed today. Among 300 published compositions for guitar, some predate the Civil War, a consistent number of arrangements is available. He began to write them for his students. Then, due to the high demand, he published from 1848. His original compositions were usually written in the classic style of the parlor music of the time. Today, most of his works are available in some libraries throughout the United States and England. Christian Friedrich Martin Sr., after having worked with the renowned guitar maker Johann Georg Stauffer in Vienna, moved with the family in New York City in 1833, then to Nazareth, Pennsylvania in 1859, and have developed earlier a new model of guitar with X bracing, a system that would become typical in the construction of American guitars, suitable to withstand the strong tension of iron strings used since 1920. Martin's decorated models costed up to $80, while simple ones approximately no more than $20. Moreover, at the time, fancy and smaller guitars were popular among women, while men preferred more austere instruments. Holland devoted specific attention to Italian opera, in particular to Bellini, Donizetti, Rossini and Verdi. My research thus far demonstrates that he wrote 3 bouquets of melodies for solo guitar on Norma, Sonnambula and Puritani, and 3 scraps from the operas for 1 or 2 guitars on Norma and Sonnambula. The main feature of Holland's operatic arrangements is the particular focus on the melody line. The keys used allow often to an easy performance on the fretboard. The accompaniments are very simple, suitable for the performance of an amateur or with some changes to that of a professional. In composing and arranging for guitar, some keys present technical issues. In such cases, the left hand may be forced to constantly change between uncomfortable or otherwise complex positions. Consequently, Holland's transpositions are made in order to facilitate performance on the guitar. The orchestral introductions are performed with a clearer timbre, playing towards the bridge in order to imitate the sound of the orchestra. Conversely, performing the vocal line, I use a darker tone in order to imitate the voices of the singers and a higher volume than the accompaniment. In this arrangement, I've added an introduction and varied the melody at various points, reflecting my study of various recordings, including the early ones made by Adelina Patti. In the second arrangement, I added some bars towards the end, in order to correspond with the original finale, not included in Holland's arrangement. I also sought to expand the palette of sounds available on the guitar in order to reflect the orchestration of the original work. This included changing the melody through adding new passage works in order to recreate the orchestral sound. In the final bars of Lisa Scavatina, I gave more time to the highest notes in order to emulate the vocal qualities of the original. The arrangement of Viraviso o Luoghi Ameni uses the key of D major in order to create a brighter tone, the accompaniment consisting only of bass notes. There are evidences of the same melody arranged by other composers, presenting a more complex texture between melody and accompaniment. For instance, the Nachtwanderin, opus 35 by Johann Caspar Merz. In both arrangements, I used different instrumental sounds in order to imitate the timbres of the vocal part, the flute and the choir. In particular, I played the flute melody towards the fingerboard and towards the bridge for the chorus. I have just presented the current state of my own research. Such works are worthy of wider dissemination, which can contribute to enhanced knowledge. My aims are to promote this repertoire in order to stimulate the interest in it by other guitarists. I have had the opportunity to present this repertoire in a great number of concerts, including my solo recital, A Guitar at the Opera, and as part of a duo called Le Permute, in 2 guitars at the opera. I perform with a copy of an instrument of the second half of the 19th century made by the Sicilian luthier Flavio Alaimo. This will allow me to further recreate the soundscape and unique timbres of the composer's original intention. This project will be supported by a studio recording. Thank you very much.